Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree, and happy holidays to everybody who celebrates various holidays this time of year. Today, I'm doing a follow up to my best Christmas presents video, where I talked about my favorite Christmases growing up. This is the reverse of that. This is the worst Christmas presents I ever got as a kid. Now, I want to be clear on two things. The first thing I want to be clear on is we were extremely poor. For the first 12 years of my life, my parents didn't have steady employment at all. So we were welfare kids. We were on food stamps, etc. And so we had a lot of homemade Christmas presents. And while we did occasionally get toys, my parents would scrape together money to get us toys and whatnot. It was very rare that we got toys, and they were never very expensive toys. And it was usually like one or two toys. But starting around the age of 12, my parents got better jobs. They were able to get steady full-time jobs with decent pay. And so Christmases and birthdays, etc., got better. The second thing I want to say is I'm not disparaging the homemade gifts. They have sentimental value, and there's nothing wrong with homemade gifts. So I'm not going to be talking about the Christmases where I got homemade gifts as among the worst Christmases. And I'm not really disparaging my mom because she did her best. But these are going to be what I classify as near misses, where I would ask for A and then I would get L instead, which is like so far down the alphabet, it's almost like, how did you get from A to L? Sometimes. So I have a handful of personal stories I want to go through. The first one is Christmas, I want to say 93, 92 or 93. This would have been the year I turned 11 years old. This would have been the Christmas just after I turned 11. What makes this one stand out for me is I had been, up to this point, regularly reading X-Men comic books and watching the Saturday morning Fox X-Men animated series from the early 90s that you're all familiar with. And so my parents knew I was into X-Men characters. They had already previously gotten me a couple of X-Men action figures. I had a Cyclops, a Storm, and a Wolverine. So they knew that I was into X-Men. They got me two what they thought were X-Men action figures at the time. One of them was Strong Guy, who was not an X-Man, and the other one was Warpath, who was also not an X-Man. I believe those were X-Force or maybe even X-Factor. I consider this a near miss because I didn't read X-Force, and I didn't know who these clowns were. These were not X-Men. They were not on the X-Men cartoon. They were not in any of the X-Men video games that I had. They were not in any of the X-Men comic books I had read. These were not X-Men. And so I classified this as nice try, Mom, but you missed the mark. The second Christmas that stands out in my mind, where I pointed out to my mom at the time that she not only missed the mark, she was not even in the ballpark. She was across the street at the park, and she was in the wrong vicinity. This was Christmas 2002, and I'm going to backtrack to another Christmas, but I'm going to come to that after this one. In September of 2002, I bought my first DVD player for my I got it with my birthday money. I would have been 20 years old. And so I told my parents and my sisters, the only thing I want for Christmas are DVDs. I said, even if it's a movie I have on VHS, get it for me on DVD because I'm going to replace my VHS tapes with DVDs and start collecting DVDs going forward. Now, my parents knew I was into horror, but they also knew I was into comic books, action, and sci fi. So they had a roadmap. And I got 5 movies that Christmas. My dad bought me 2 DVDs, as I had asked him to. He bought me Lethal Weapon 1 Director's Cut and Lethal Weapon 2 Director's Cut on DVD. And so, job well done. He did a good job. My mom not only missed the mark, she was way off. She got me 3 films. 2 of them were on video cassette. 1 of them was on DVD. The 2 films she got me on video cassette, VHS, were Adam Sandler movies. And I don't even remember which ones because I hate Adam Sandler. I know one of them was the golfing one, but I can't remember the other one because I didn't fucking watch it. I traded it to the video store for a DVD. I think it was Spider-Man I traded it for. I traded them both in for a copy of, I think it was Spider-Man 2002. It was either that or Attack of the Clones. It was one or the other. But anyways, I asked my mom why she got me movies on cassette. And she said, well, they didn't have those ones on DVD. And I was like, okay. Next question. Why did you get me Adam Sandler movies knowing how much I hate Adam Sandler? And her response was fishy, but a very mom response. She said, you are always talking about Adam Sandler. I thought you liked him. And I'm like, no, I'm always talking about how much I hate him. Whenever one of his movies comes on TV, I always talk about how much I can't stand him and I don't watch that movie. So that was a miss. The DVD she got me was Spaceballs. Mom should have known I hated Spaceballs, but to be fair, to her credit, I guess I never told her I hate Spaceballs. But she thought Spaceballs was a good movie for me because I liked Star Wars. And she didn't realize that the reason why I hate Spaceballs is because I like Star Wars. And I felt like Spaceballs wasn't just making fun of Star Wars, it was making fun of people who like Star Wars, which was me. And so I did watch Spaceballs on DVD because my mom bought it for me, and I only had 3 DVDs at the time. The 2 my dad got me and the one my mom got me. So I didn't have a lot to watch because it was a DVD only player. I sold my VCR to the pawn shop so that I could help me pay for buying the DVD player. So I didn't have a VCR anymore, so I had no way of watching video cassettes anymore. I was trying to sell my video cassettes. Which I ended up doing after a while. And I was replacing them with DVDs as time went on. Now I want to back it up to Christmas 1998. And this one stands out, and I believe I would have been 14 or 15. I'm not 100%. I would have either been 14 or 15. But I do remember it was Christmas 98. And this one stands out because I asked my mom to get me a Nintendo 64 for Christmas if she was going to buy me anything. Because she had a good job. Dad had a good job. They were making good money. And we got a lot of Christmas presents that Christmas. So I expected that if she was going to get me anything, she would get me the thing I asked for. And I opened up my Christmas present and I got a Nintendo console. But it wasn't a Nintendo 64. It was a Super Nintendo. And this almost would have been a good gift except for the fact that I already had a Super Nintendo. So what I ended up doing was taking the Super Nintendo she gave me and keeping it because it was the Model 2 and giving my Model 1 Super Nintendo to my little sister, and I gave it to her and let her play it. So I made the best of it. But in 2005 was the last worst Christmas present I got from my mom. Subsequent Christmases, she never bought me toys or comics or movies or video games ever again. She would stick to things I needed. So she would always ask me, what do you need? Microwave, or, a blender, or, stuff like that. So she stopped getting me toys and things like that. Partially because she was never any good at it, and partially because she said I was an adult now, so she wasn't buying me toys anymore. And also because I was a toy collector and she didn't want to buy me a toy I might have already had, which was good on her. But she did buy me a DVD that Christmas and 2 Nintendo GameCube video games, which was thoughtful because I did have a Nintendo GameCube. And I didn't complain to her about the games she bought me, although they weren't games I would have bought myself. The first game she bought me was Prince of Persia: The Warrior Within. Now, this is a good game, don't get me wrong. This is an absolutely good game. There's nothing wrong with this game. My complaint, which I didn't tell my mom, I was just like, oh cool, thanks for the game. My complaint was I didn't have Sands of Time or whatever the second one was called. So she bought me basically the third game in a trilogy, and I didn't already have the first 2 games, which was no big deal. The second game she got me was so out of left field. I'm going to be honest, I don't remember what it was. It doesn't stand out in my mind. I can't remember what it was. Because it was not a game I would have asked for. It was a game I clearly didn't enjoy and I didn't play. So I don't remember what it was. It wasn't one of your main games. It wasn't Mortal Kombat or Mario or Zelda or anything like that. It was just some weird random game. And so I honestly don't remember what it was. But the DVD she got me was interesting because well, I'll say what it is and then I'll say why it was interesting. She got me Jay and Silent Bob Go to Degrassi. And this one, I didn't tell my mom you did bad. I was like, oh, thanks. This is a cool present. Thank you, blah, blah, blah. But the reason why this one offended me was because I had no interest in Degrassi. And Jay and Silent Bob Do Degrassi is actually a pair of episodes, I believe, from Degrassi The Next Generation. And the reason why this was an unusual present is because I never watched Degrassi The Next Generation. And Mom would have never, I never watched Degrassi at all. I never even talked about it. I didn't even really know what it was outside of when I was in 8th grade. I was in, the equivalent of ISS, in school suspension. So I was in a disciplinary program where I was not allowed to go to class with the other kids. I was kept in a room with the other quote-unquote disciplinary kids, the bad kids. And during our lunch break, instead of letting us go to the cafeteria, they took us to a classroom where they would let us go to the lunch line, get our lunch, and they took us to a classroom where we would sit and watch episodes of Degrassi High. I saw this as a punishment. So I had negative associations with Degrassi at that time in my life. And so this present was disappointing because here my mom was getting me something that was related to something that had been used as a punishment in my childhood. And so I was kind of offended by that. Since then, she's either gotten me, like I said, practical gifts, which I always am grateful for, or gift cards. This year she just got me cash, which I was also grateful for, because I needed the cash more than I needed, comic books or toys or anything. And I put that money to good use. So, like I said, our Christmases weren't terrible, but they weren't always great either. But it wasn't always about what you got. It was, the spirit of the holiday, being with your family, watching Christmas movies, singing Christmas carols, decorating the tree, etc., etc. It was all the whole shebang wrapped up in one. So, I don't want this video to come off as I'm complaining or bitching that my Christmases sucked, blah, 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 or my mom was a lousy gift giver. I just wanted to point out a couple of examples as a companion to the greatest Christmases I ever got. These were the less than stellar Christmas presents that I got. And, just kind of give a little backstory. The X-Men thing, I don't fault her too much on because they were Toy Biz, and she knew that the toys she had bought me previously, the X-Men toys she had previously bought me, were all Toy Biz, and they had X-Men packaging. They were bundled with the X-Men toys. So unless she looked closely at the packaging and read that it said X-Force on the package instead of X-Men, she wouldn't have known the difference. And to be fair, she probably wouldn't have known what X-Force was anyways. It had an X in the title, so she would have assumed it was the same thing. So I can't fault her for that. But I did hold a grudge for a long time after specifically asking for DVDs and getting movies on VHS instead, because that felt like you weren't even listening to me. And I can almost understand how, I guess if she heard me talking about Adam Sandler a lot, allegedly, misinterpreting my animosity towards him for an interest in him, I suppose. So I guess I can see how she got confused there. The Degrassi thing was out of left field because I never told my mom that I watched Degrassi in 8th grade as a punishment. And she didn't know who Jay and Silent Bob were. I didn't know who Jay and Silent Bob were at the time. I never seen any of their movies. Mallrats, Clerks, Chasing Amy, none of those. I had not seen any of those movies up to this point. So this was so far out of left field, I don't know where it came from. Because like I said, I was into sci-fi and action adventure movies and horror and things like that. I was never into comedies to begin with. So the fact that she keeps buying me DVD movies on whatever format, she keeps buying me comedies when she should know, because I've made this abundantly clear, I am absolutely not a fan of comedy. And so I don't know where she got the idea that I would be into Degrassi, of all things, or Jay and Silent Bob of all things. Now, later in life, and I'm saying 2 or 3 years later maybe, I did discover the Kevin Smith View Askew New Jersey Chronicles, as they're known. But that was way later, and she wouldn't have known about that because there's no way, my mom being a Sunday school teacher, I was going to sit down and watch any of those Kevin Smith movies with her. Ever. So, she shouldn't have even known who Jay and Silent Bob were. Because they weren't, by 2004, they weren't really a thing anymore. They were already done, forgotten. They weren't in the popular lexicon anymore. Not to the point where my mom, a grown woman who wasn't watching MTV, would have even had any idea who they were in the first place. So that one always confused me. I never knew where that came from. That one confused me. The GameCube games, I'll forgive her because the Prince of Persia game was actually a pretty good game. That was a very fun game. The other one, I don't remember what it was. I'm going to be honest, I don't. This was 20 years ago. But I do remember not liking it, whatever it was, and not enjoying it. So whatever it was, she missed the mark. But there you go.